Right, so we want to know what you think, because basically this story is that there is a report coming out which is going to suggest that people who cause disruption then pay for the disruption that they cause. We don't know the detail quite of how that would work yet. But
effectively, if you're in a cafe or a shop, in a row of shops, and Just Stop Oil completely... We're just saying Just Stop Oil, for an example, completely disrupt business for a day or 2 days, you can't get anybody into your shop, you can then... There'll be a mechanism by which you can get money from the protest organisation. I think that sounds very sensible. Because... I
think it's sense. I don't know, because, you know, whenever we do these... Whenever these stories come up, which is about compromising the ability to protest or free speech, I always take a little step back and think, what is this going to mean? What does this mean for people? But actually, so I'm a little bit conflicted about this, because I do like the idea that if you are a business that's lost money, you should be compensated for that. Would that... do you know what, as well? My cynicism says they'd probably never get any money out of them anyway.
No, they probably won't.
They can try.
That's
and
the
they
point,
would send them letters and they'd give them fines and it would probably...
But you think about the protest every Saturday now in central London, that is causing the pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel march. That is causing huge disruption. There's a nice little cafe I use near Trafalgar Square, and he says to me every week, are they protesting again this Saturday? Because he effectively has to close his cafe. Yeah. Saturday's a huge day for him. And they're running on a business on a shoestring already. But, of course, the counter-argument is, well, protest, if you don't make an impact, you're not making a noise. That's
right. Ben has got in touch to say, good morning, Andrew and Bev. All governments and MPs throughout Westminster must be held responsible for the contaminated blood scandal. They care only about themselves and not the British public who put them there. And one of you saying, agreeing with me with this phrase, this accountability deficit. Dave says, spot on, Bev, it is an accountability deficit. It feels like we live in that time, don't we, where everyone can blame somebody else, nobody takes responsibility, even if it means 3,000 people have lost their lives.
You think the successive governments, we're going back from Jim Callaghan's Labour government, then it's the Thatcher government, Major's government, Blair's government, Cameron's government. It was Theresa May, who I'm often very critical of, it was her government which set up this inquiry into infected blood, which we're getting today. 2017 that was announced, and this infected blood scandal has been going on. We've known about it for...
I think it's 6 years, isn't it?
Well, we've known about infected blood for decades.
Yeah, but how can an inquiry take 6 years?
Well, the Bloody Sunday inquiry took over 10 years.
It's just ridiculous.
And in France, they had... Because it was many countries were importing infected blood. It was because of clotting in the 70s and 80s. There was a shortage of blood, so they're importing it from the United States and that the checks weren't being done. It was coming from sex workers, beggars, the homeless, prisons, and so... But in France, they've had their public inquiry in 1999. They paid compensation, and they also charged 3 politicians with manslaughter, one of whom was found guilty. But let's go back to our conversation, though, about protests having to pay potentially for disruption. Gill Tavner is from Just Stop Oil. Gill Tavner. Good morning, Gill. You will have read what Lord Walney's proposing. It seems fair cop, isn't it? If you're going to cause huge financial disruption to businesses, you might have to dig deep into your pockets.
First of all, our pockets aren't deep. Secondly, no, it's not fair cop, is it? A fair cop would be looking, who do we sue when, you know, fossil fuels release more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere? Who does a farmer sue when they can only plant on 1/3 of their land? Who do we sue when our homes are flooded? Who do you sue when an elderly relative is washed away in a flood or dies in their home of heat stroke? It's just, all we're trying to do is raise the alarm of these things coming up. And we wouldn't have to be disrupting anything if the government would take these things seriously. And the amount of disruption coming down the line and the amount of damage that fossil fuel burning and continuing to burn fossil fuels is causing, that's what we do. Tiny little bit. It's like tripping over and cutting your knee. You know, it's just ridiculous.
The catastrophic thinking, Gill, that you demonstrate, though, when you talk about this issue, I'm sure that feels important to you. 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line. Hang on. But it doesn't feel important to the person whose cafe can't open on a Saturday morning because of this disruption outside their business, who can't pay their bills or their mortgage, because you're fighting for something that you believe, in your catastrophic thinking, will happen several decades' time. Make that make sense.
Listen, this nonsense about I believe in my catastrophic thinking. Scientists are hanging their heads, well, pulling their hair out in despair.
Not all of them.
They are. The ones who aren't mercenary, the ones who study science, very carefully, have done the physics. They understand this stuff. Climate scientists are saying we're really headed in a bad direction. Antonio Guterres has said we're on the highway to hell. And we're just not taking this seriously enough. We're just not taking it seriously. So, yeah, of course we hate causing disruption. Of course the owner of the cafe...
You don't hate causing disruption, Gill. You relish it. Jill, you relish it, because that's what you do. That's what you do.
Tell me what I relish.
We watch you doing it.
I'm a teacher. I'm out. What I hate, and I'm not relishing this. I don't relish disruption. I don't want to do any of it. None of us do. What we really want is to wake up tomorrow to a government that says, we're taking this seriously, because climate collapse is a serious thing, because our food systems and everything have evolved in a stable climate. And when you've got a stable food supplies, you can look at society, you can think about education, you can think about health and well-being, you can think about law and order. But that stability, as you'll see if you look out of your window or watch the global news, that is collapsing, and it's only going to get worse. And what we need our government to do is put things into place that stop it getting worse, start that, which means reducing.
Give us a time scale.
No more fossil fuels by 2030. But also look at the damage it's going to do to our society and infrastructure.
But the damage, Jill, the damage to society at the moment by some of these measures, which are scientifically disputed, with the pursuit to Agenda 2030.
That argument. I'm sorry, I'm not having it that the consequences of climate change are scientifically disputed. It's nonsense, and you're spinning this nonsense. And I just wish that you'd be more responsible and stop doing the work of fossil fuel companies and say, we're in a really serious situation here, and please stand up for it. 20 years ago, I worked on some writing with a climate scientist, and even then he said, we're really getting to a last chance saloon here. And we're just down the road, and now we're looking at a really small window that we can make this less bad.
If you get
I've got 2 daughters.
Jill, I hear you. Jill, I hear this. Look, we're giving you a good say here, but if a cafe, let's just talk about a cafe or a newsagent can show yet again you've cost them revenue, why would you not think it fair to repay them some money? They may be putting people out of a job.
Why would you not think it fair if that cafe...
No, why don't you answer the question? Why don't you answer the question, Jill?
Because I'm saying...
Jill, answer the question. You're not going to answer the question.
Can a cafe owner sue someone when a flood rushes through their cafe and they spend weeks? What do I think it's fair that... No, I don't think we need to be, because what is fair is we need to be able to say and to be heard to say
You sound so arrogant, Jill.
If our government would
You sound so arrogant.
Just tell me this.
I don't think it's arrogant to fight for the future of my children and everyone's children and your children and the children of the lady who owns this cafe that you're talking about.
Well, let's just look at this. OK, so let's look at this report and let's look at this in actuality. Will it make any difference to you and your friends and colleagues at Just Stop Oil if you know you will be personally fined if somebody can't get to their meeting and they lose a contract and that bill ends up at your door? Will it make any difference?
Let me be honest about these things. Of course it will make a difference. We're human. We're not rich. Of course, all these things make it more difficult. That is their aim. They want to make it more difficult for us to speak out about something that's really important, which is the fossil fuel companies' involvement in our politics. Of course, it'll make it more difficult, and some people will find it harder to carry on than others. But the drive and the feel of what we think is important to be said and to be done doesn't diminish, and the sort of catastrophe that we're heading towards is not diminished, whether we're saying it or not.
And you know what, Jill? And you know what? Nobody would support your right to say what you believe, even if I strongly disagree with you. But the disruption that you guys cause to everyday people... But everyday people, the disruption that you're causing, you're losing the room, and it's gone beyond acceptable protest for a lot of people. Thank you. We appreciate your time, Jill.
Which is really unpleasant. Join justopoil.org.
Thank you. Gill Tavner.